Good morning, everyone who is watching around the world. My name is Sergio, last name Barrow. I'm a Gambian national, and then I'm an attorney in the U.S. I specialize in immigration and nationality law. You'd have to bear with me. This is my first live video on Facebook. It's something that I don't like to do. But this thing, I think it's really important that we start with this one. The conversation today, I'll be speaking in English, and sometimes I will deviate and then speak in local language, depending on if I see questions from people around the world, and then how best they prefer their questions to be answered. So you can bear with me on that. First, the way I would like the program to be conducted is that first I'll give a commentary about the basic structure of the U.S. immigration law, and then specifically what I will address will be if you are a Gambian, African, or an immigrant in the U.S., and then the do's and the don't, and then the whole hullabaloo about people being rounded, arrested, and then deported, to know your situation, and then that way you would understand whether you are at imminent risk of being arrested by immigration officers, and then whether you'll be removed from the country or not. Now, first thing first, when we use the word deportation, it's a legal term. So I think to simplify it, the best way to at least help everybody understand this concept, let's just assume that it's a perfect world here. Anyone who is a Gambian or an African who is in the U.S., let's say, you entered with a visa or some kind of admission document. Let's say you were admitted, inspected, and then, admitted by immigration officers, meaning either you came with a visa, whether immigrant visas like green cards or non-immigrant visas like B1, B2s, or F1 visas, P1, what have you not. Or let's say you are someone who actually came through Mexico, South America. I have people who actually, traverse those areas and then come to the U.S. through, Mexico, Southern America. But let's say for those folks who are coming in from Mexico and then other part of Southern America, let's just assume for the sake of this discussion that they have actually been in the U.S. for at least 2 years. That way they would at least, qualify under the general category. Now, unless at some point you have seen an immigration judge in a court, or let's say you are someone who actually, for whatever reason, was given a notice to appear or so-called order, as it was back in the days, to appear at immigration court, and then you fail to attend your court and then have what they call an absentia order of removal, or you actually face the immigration judge and then you were given order of deportation or removal, as it is called now, and then you fail to depart. Those are the people who should be concerned at this point in time. Now, if you are in the U.S., let's say with an expired visa, or you entered without any documentation, but at least you have been living here for 2 years or more, you are here as a student and then you went out of status. Yes, you are here contrary to the laws of U.S., but it doesn't mean that the whole, scaremongering that is going around that for whatever reason, ICE will just come and then summarily arrest you and then send you to Gambia. That will not happen. That's what I wanted to get out of the way. So if you are living in the U.S., whether with an expired visa or here without any status, or even if you entered undocumented, do not think for a second that ICE will just come to your home and then arrest you and then send you to Gambia without actually seeing an immigration judge. It doesn't work that way. So you shouldn't, well, you should be alarmed that you are here without status, but at least you shouldn't think that, the process would just be as is in other countries we see, like in the Gambia. We are not strangers to this thing. We see immigrants getting rounded by immigration officers, put them in trucks. We don't know where they, they take them, but that's not how it works here. At least you'll be given due process. That's what I wanted to get out of the way. Now, coming in terms of the 44 Gambians or 43 Gambians that, allegedly were removed from the U.S. and then to the Gambia. This is what I want people to understand. Any Gambian that has been part of this unfortunate incident, who were deported recently, people should know that There are folks who actually have a final order of removal, meaning at some point in time, either they see an immigration judge, or they were asked to see an immigration judge and then never saw the judge, or they, for whatever reason, unless I don't think there is anyone in this group that, I would say expedited removal, so I wouldn't even go over there. But any Gambian who is part of these 44 people or 43 people that were, removed from the U.S., because I can only verify 8, personally that I know, but I'm not, discrediting the fact that, 44 people were removed, but I'm just saying the ones I know personally. And then I do know that they all have a final order of removal. And then it is correct to say that anyone who was removed from the U.S. to the Gambia actually have a final order of removal. That's what people should understand. It doesn't mean that people would come to your home and then ICE officers specifically arrest you and then send you to Gambia without going through due process. That's, the misinformation that I saw on Facebook a lot. That's what I wanted to, get out of the way. That's the first thing. Now, for other Gambians who called me yesterday, the reason why I did this video, a lot of people were calling me. Some of them are, mainly, let's say, asylum applicants who, for whatever reason, their cases have been referred to immigration court. Do not, for one, think that because you are in proceeding right now, ICE would just come and then send you back home. No, that won't happen. And then the only thing you can be concerned with if you're in the U.S., let's say you are here without status, the two things that you ought to be aware of is, how do I stay out of immigration detention? Because there are certain things, if you commit that in the U.S., and then under the immigration law, under the immigration purview, the law would classify you as what they call mandatory detainee, meaning you will actually stay in detention until, your case is over. And then that would actually expedite your cases. What are some of those things? If you commit aggravated felony, or let's say you are someone who actually came to this country without any documentation, and then you committed any controlled substance offenses, the law classify you as a mandatory detainee. And then people with 2 CMIT, crime involving moral turpitudes, and then rape, murder, aggravated felony, and then all those serious immigration violations. If you commit those things, yes, immigration will put you in custody even if you are here lawfully. The only thing that it will do to your case is it will expedite your case, because once you are confined, the immigration court would remove your cases from the non-detained cases and put it on detained cases. And then that could just run within 6 months or 8 months. And then if you lose your case, unless you appeal, there's a high chance that immigration would engage in what they call safe removal. And then you actually will go to Gambia. And then the only other alternative to that is, unless and until if they are willing to, if for whatever country you claim as home is not cooperative in securing a travel document for you, that's the only time you get to stay here. But even that, because I've seen cases, this is, I don't want it to misspoke, and then this area is a little bit tricky. Let's say you are in immigration detention, and then you have a final order of removal, and then for whatever reason, your government refused to issue a travel document, whether they couldn't verify your citizenship or they believe that you are not a national of that country. The only way you could be released from custody is you have to do a habeas petition with the federal court. But the problem with that is sometimes immigration can classify other people as what they call danger to the public. And then if immigration, depending on the severity of the crime, they arrested you for, you can still be in detention while they are trying to remove you. And I've seen those things happen. You can fight it. More than likely, maybe if detention become prolonged, constitutional issues might come into place. But until then, you can still be in detention. That's one of the reasons that I want people to understand. And then folks are typing questions. You would have to bear with me. If I wanted to, catch up with all the questions right now, it would take some time. But what I would recommend is if people could send me inbox and Facebook inbox messages, that would be easier to read the questions. But if I wanted to read your threads and then answer the question, that might be a little bit difficult. Let me clarify that. At least send me PM private messages or instant messages or instant messenger, whatever they are called, on Facebook, and then I will try and then access those questions. And then others who are asking what's the theme or the discussion about, it's about the current immigration trends in the US, and then how you can help yourself in this difficult time. The other issue some people ask, and then they are addressing me, is what can the government of the Gambia do in terms of people who are here and then they believe that they have a final order of removal, and then the US government is actively seeking to secure their travel document. This is what I would say, and then I'm just speaking purely on the law. I know this is, it's sentimental, it's emotional, and then we might agree to disagree on certain things, but this is what I can tell you. Your best weapon in immigration proceeding in the US is not to rely on the Gambia government to refuse to issue a travel document or even a passport for you to be removed to the Gambia. That's not your best weapon if you are fighting the US immigration system here. That's not a variable you can control. And then I am telling you that if the Gambia government can verify your citizenship, they have an obligation to take you back home. So all those myths out there saying that, well, it's the change in administration. Before, Gambians were not deported, and then now the administration might have signed something with the government, and then that's why they are actually accepting Gambians to be deported, or there are monetary incentive involved. Well, newsflash, US, if you are deported, you must go home, and then the government do not give any incentive for your country to take you back. The American government will not give any money to Gambia to accept our people. They have a lot of weapons, or arsenals in their law books that they can, enforce to make sure people go home. So this is what I want folks to understand. Because you have a deportation order, don't sit here and then, roll your dice on the fact that my government may refuse to, issue a travel document, and then for whatever reason, I get to stay in the US. That's not your best weapon. Your best weapon is to use the law and then fight the system. That's the only way out. No amount of hiding or running away from the law would help you in this scenario. That's what I can tell you. And then it cut across all boards. Gambians, Ghanaians, Senegalese, Mexicans, Hondurans, I handle cases from different nationalities. So I am telling you that, you cannot hide from the authorities, or your best bet is not to sit and hope that the borough administration or the Gambia government would just, stall issuance of travel document to legitimate Gambian. They can do that because the US laws require that if a national or a citizen of a country has a final order of removal, meaning, you have a deportation order, which is final, your case is completely over, and then there is no appeal pending. If your government refuses to take you, according to the laws of the US, 8 USC 1253, the US government can impose a sanction on Gambia, as they did before, to block issuance of any visa category that include immigrant visas, non-immigrant visas, paroles, and then any form of admission to a national of that country. And then we saw this thing happen in 2016 when, then Hillary just finished becoming a Secretary of State, and then the Obama administration imposed Section 243D ban on Gambian, even though that was limited to senior government officials and their family members. I would say that the Obama administration had some temperament, and then they were more lenient, but they could have extended the ban to everybody. So how does that work? Because let's say the argument cut across both boards, and then we are all hoping that, well, these are our brothers and sisters. We don't want them to go home. I'm not going to delve into the issues why people get deported from the US, but I'll tell you the general reason why, people, usually get deported. But let's say for argument's sake, we said that, no, if any Gambian has a final order of removal, even we can verify the legitimacy of their, Gambian citizenship, our government should take a position and say that these people should not be removed. Let's say, we take that as, the previous administration had been stalling the US government. And then let's say we have a president, as we do now, the likes of Donald Trump, and then they just exercise that complete ban on immigrant visas from non-immigrant to immigrant visas. What that means is that you would have a Gambian here who probably might be living here for 5-6 years, have a wife in Gambia, or, kids in Gambia, who wanted to, bring their their children and then their family members to the US to join them. But because our government refused to accept some other people, now they are suffering the consequences of that ban. And then that wouldn't be fair, because that's what I'm trying to get at. there is no easy fix to this thing, but the U.S. government has a lot of laws on the books that they can, impose on countries who refuse to take their citizens. And then some people send me questions like, well, we have a prior administration under Gambia, and then he refused to take people, nothing came out of it. I don't want to speculate, but this is what I do know. When dealing with Gambia, it's not that's not a regular or a normal government, and then as most Gambian would see. Under President Jammeh, assuming, let's say, what he did, if the U.S. were to play balls with him as, he was, a lot of Gambian would have suffered. And then our country, especially seeing the number of Gambians who immigrate to U.S. in terms of just regular visas, like B1, B2, and then F1 visas, is minimal, if not, very scanty. So if the government wanted to play bull with Jammeh, that would actually, handicap the country. So just because they understand the kind of person he is, and then they let go or isolate him, and then still continue to do relationship with him, does not make him a tougher guy. So if governments are dealing with reasonable governments, as we all claim now, Gambia, we have a new government, democracy, in the name of democracy, everybody is shouting. That's what democracy actually means. Sometimes it's messy. And then our government have obligations. They have to take their citizens, because if they don't, another citizen would, suffer the repercussions of that. That's what people have to understand. And then if you don't need to sign a document. Under the laws here, this is what the myth I want people to understand. The Gambia government does not need to sign any document for U.S. government to return their people. What they need to do is verify whether these are Gambian citizens. And I'm telling you, I have clients where, embassy officials would do due diligence. They would, in fact, come to detention centers and then actually verify Gambian citizenship. So they do that. They are pursuing that. And then what I can tell you is that the new government, if they can verify your Gambian citizenship, they will actually issue a travel document, and then you will go home. It's difficult. It's tough for us because we are all interconnected. And then if you remove one person, it affects a lot of other folks in the Gambia. And that is something that's unfortunate, but it is what it is under the law. That's what I wanted to tell folks. The other issues, some folks, wrote to me about, excuse me, I'll have to take a little bit time to read some of these questions because I have no issue with people asking specific questions that affect their situation. Just give me a hypothetical without names. Just tell me, what if someone is in this situation, and then this is what is happening, how best we can help ourselves. That way I can address it. And then the other issue that I read on Facebook, some of the points I wanted to address before we get into questions and answers is Gambians who have been removed. This is what I want our general population to understand. Some of them might be removed from the U.S. not because they have permanent bars or because they are serious criminals or they are felons. Their crime could be as simple as overstaying their visa in the U.S. and then they went through proceeding. For whatever reason, they were unable to adjust or regularize their immigration status, and then the U.S. government ultimately deported them. And some of these people have family members here. The only thing we can do as Gambian, and then the one thing that I want these people to know, and then what they can do is, there are ways to come back. And then I cannot delve into specific, but this is what I wanted to tell Gambians. Just because you have been removed from the U.S. temporarily doesn't mean your fate is sealed. I'm not even talking about living in the Gambia. I'm talking about you can actually come back to the U.S. For instance, some of these people, let's say you have family ties in the U.S. Some of them might have spouses like wife, or some of them might have husbands, or some of them might have children in the U.S. that are over the age of 21. If you have these kind of family members in the U.S. and then they are actually U.S. citizens, there is a way for you to come back. Of course, it would take some time. It might take months, but you can actually come back to the U.S. Now, there are people who actually are beneficiaries of approved petition because some of these family members petitioned them file immigration benefit on their behalf, it get approved. The only problem there in Gambia is you have to look at the law in two different ways. People ask me, well, XYZ is being deported and then he has family ties in the US. Why aren't they, the US government, letting him or her stay here and then get his or her green card? Well, the law sometimes work on procedure. That's what people have to understand. A classic example could be, let's say I came here 2002, and then upon my arrival, I was unfortunate and then run in contact with immigration law. Let's say I haven't done any other crime. The only thing maybe, let's say coming as a student or even a visitor, and then my I-94 expired, or, I fell out of status because I was not attending school. And then walking by my business, and then I ran into immigration. They arrested me. Once they do, either they put me in detention and then release me on bond. Now I'm going to immigration court. I appear in front of the immigration judge, and then being new and then uninformed, you don't know what your release are. And then because immigration, according to the U.S. Supreme Court, is a civil proceeding, you do not have a right to lawyer in immigration court. So most of these people, they don't have lawyers. They don't get good advices, what they can do or what they can file. Let's say that happened to be me, and then I went through, the whole proceeding, and then the judge asked me, what relief are you filing? I don't know what I need to file. I don't have a lawyer. I don't have any money. You are confused. And then you end up getting a deportation order because maybe you don't even know your rights, or maybe because you don't even know what you qualify for. I have that deportation order, but because I am considered a low-risk offender, the U.S. officials, let me be. I'm minding my business. Let's say for whatever reason, you are living here for the next 10, 15 years. And then during the course of that time, I happen to get married and then I have kids. My wife is here. And then one would naturally think that, well, now that, you are married and then you have a U.S. citizen spouse, why can't they file, an application on your behalf? That way, you get to stay here instead of, walking around without paperwork. There are two problems with that. The moment you have a deportation order with immigration court, the law says that USCIS, which is usually the agency here that adjudicate green card benefits and then other applications, no longer have jurisdiction to discuss your case. Your case is with EOIR, Executive Office of Immigration Review. It's like a complete system from USCIS, meaning the courts have jurisdiction over your case. So what your spouse can do in this situation, they can file a petition for you to classify you as a relative of them, meaning, hey, XYZ is my husband, my wife, or my parent, and then I'm a U.S. citizen, and then I wanted to file for them. You can do that. And then once they file that petition on your behalf, and then that petition get approved, this is where most of the problem come, because usually these things happen years after the deportation order. Let's say, my wife filed the I-130 petition for me, and now I have that approved I-130 petition. The next step is, of course, to file a green card. But the problem is you cannot file green card with U.S. Customs and Immigration Service because your case is with the immigration court. Immigration court has jurisdiction over your case. Now, the problem is you say, oh, well, let me just go to the immigration judge now and apply for my green card. Well, Congress put a timeline. If you have an order of removal, meaning you have a deportation order, you literally have 90 days to file a motion to reopen to do anything else you wanted to do. And then these things don't happen in 90 days. Usually it happens years later. So let's say this thing happened 5-6 years after your deportation order. If you are going back to the court, unless you have the government lawyers agreeing to what you wanted to do, most of the time you are out of luck. Because if you want to file a motion to reopen, one, not only are you looking at the time has expired for you to file, unless if you qualify under the exceptions. The problem is most judges, depending on what area of the country you are in. Let's say if you are in Atlanta area or Texas Immigration Court, where most people, hearings happen, or let's say Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm telling you, the government lawyers in those areas would never join your motion to reopen. That is the problem. You must have a strong legal foundation or argument to actually reopen your case with the judges. Because the government lawyer, they won't help you. Because I have tried in the past, to solicit joint motions from government lawyers around this jurisdiction, and they will routinely say no. So you have to file a stand-alone motion with the judge and then hoping that the judge open the case. If the judge did not open your case, you cannot get green card while you are in the U.S. Even if you have 10 kids, your wife is a U.S. citizen, you are paying taxes, you have no criminal history whatsoever. I'm telling you, it has nothing to do with you. It's just how the laws, are designed. So at that point, your best option is actually leave the US and then cancel a process. The problem is most Gambians are not familiar with this procedure, and then for two reasons. We don't know, and then there's a lot of misinformation. Arguably from friends and family members who would tell you, oh, if you go as a one-way ticket, you would never come back. But I've known Gambians who actually, we did consular processing for them. They went and come back. And then majority of the people that I help are either, Asians or Hispanic that would actually go back to their country and come because they are very much familiar with, those processes. This is something that Gambians can, take advantage of. Yes, if you leave the country, most people would say you get that 10-year bar. That is true. That's just the general rule. Once you leave the country, you will trigger that 10-year deportation order. But the problem is, because you have family ties to the US, meaning husbands, wife, or children, the law would give you an excuse to file a waiver and come, in as little as within a year, rather than waiting for 10 years. What you would normally do, that approved petition that your spouse or your child file on your behalf, you transfer it to Senegal, and then you will appear in front of the US embassy over there. And then, of course, the embassy would interview you. At the end of the interview, the embassy would deny you a visa, tell you that, well, you have been deported just from the US, so basically you have a 10-year bar, but because you have family ties, they would give you a pink slip, let you know that you can apply for a waiver or you can come 10 years later. That's your choice. And then if you have family ties here, I'm telling you, you could file those waivers. There's a lot of money involved, but at least that's the difference between waiting 10 years or coming back and joining your family within a year and then having that peace of mind. Those are some of the things you can do to help, better your situation, rather than, thinking that if you use the law would, handicap you. In fact, the law is your best weapon. It's your best choice right now with the way U.S. immigration law is. The law hasn't changed much. It's just enforcement is a little bit aggressive under President Trump. Obama, yes, deported a lot of people, but most of them were actually, felons and serious criminal offenders. But under Trump, it's fair game. Anyone is vulnerable as long as if you're here out of status. That's what I want people to understand. You are the only person who can remedy your situation. And then when it comes to other folks, I know this is difficult and then it may sound a little bit unempathetic, but that's not my point. I'm just telling you, you are the only one in your situation that can actually change it. And then I'm not saying this because I do not understand. And then I went to a lot of detention centers. I interact with a lot of Gambians, Senegalese, Cameroonians, people who I know they are removed. Still now I get in touch with them. Gambians, I don't need to, say how much, I have done for my brothers and sisters. And then they understand. I went to these detention centers. People would make it look like it's horrible. Because if you're a Gambian and then you come and then immigration put you in detention, some of the detention centers are not actual detention centers. They are county jails or maybe prison that are subcontracted by immigration officials. Let's say if immigration detention is up to capacity, they would sometimes contract some of the aliens to these prison systems or county jails. But even, with those things, it doesn't mean they would mix them with hardcore criminals. They have, security risk offenders. Most of them would be in what they call GP, general population area. Because I visited these people, I'm telling you. And then if they come back, do not think that Gambians who have been removed, maybe they are in circle, and then people think that they might have done something really, really crazy. No, that's not the case. That's just the system. And then in terms of whether the U.S. government is exercising, let me put it, cruel and unusual treatment on our people, no, it's across the board. That's what happened. I've seen Gambians who have been removed under, escorts, and then others who have been voluntarily removed. And then they don't put them in chains. It depends on, the risk assessment of the offender. This, again, has nothing to do with the Gambia government. It's just how the laws are here. Most Gambians that get removed, they fly them through commercial airlines. And there are rules and then standards for commercial airlines to accept these people. And some of them, they go through transit. Now, before they put an alien that has been removed to their country, they have to do what they call a risk assessment. If, to the best judgment of immigration, they think that this individual is a high risk offender and then maybe is not cooperative or unwilling to go, of course they would chain you to restrain you. That's for your safety and the safety of others in the plane. That's what people have to understand. It doesn't mean that Gambians have been singled out, or our people, they have done something that is so inhuman. That's why they've been treated that way. That's just how it is. I'm just telling you, that's just the system. It has nothing to do with you as a Gambian or us as a Gambian, or it has anything to, it's not just limited to us. Every day I go to detention centers, people, have been deported either to, Ghana, Nigeria, Cameroon, name it, Senegal. Some of them, they would just go with one ICE escorts, and then some of them would go, depending on the group. Gambia, we never have chartered flight until this recently. Usually they put them on commercial flights. And then if there are no issues, they would just let you be, and then ICE would escort you up to the last transit country, and then half the time they would arrive on their own merit at the, international airport in Banjul. And then in terms of baggages, ICE has a policy. This is what people have to understand. Once you've been issued a deportation order, the government presumes that you will leave on your own merit at your own time. Why? You can, you may make final arrangement as to your belongings or whatnot, what you need to do. Let's say if you do not want to, file any appeal or whatnot. You leave on your own time. How does that help you? You can bag 2-3 suitcases, put them in containers, send them to Gambia. But if the government is removing you at their own expense, they just limit your belonging to one bag. Most people, if you are lucky, maybe 3 pants, 3 shirts, because there is a limit as to how much they would pay for those commercial flights. It doesn't mean because you are a Gambian or because they think of you as less of a human, that's why they are giving you that, limited baggage rights. No, that's not the case. It only means that you as an individual, it's costing the government a lot of money to remove you back to your country, because they are paying, in addition to paying your flight, they have to pay for those baggage. So usually they would just limit it to carry on. That's what they do. So the alternative to that is they are not saying that you cannot go on your own initiative. You can actually leave before they make you leave. Now, there are 2 kinds of folks when it comes to removal. There are people who, because of lack of information or because of misrepresentations, they are in this predicament. And then even with that, they can still remedy their situation. It would take some time and then money to do that. There are others who, for whatever reason, they have what they call permanent bars to green card. If you are in the the latter category, let's say for whatever reason, and then you sat with an experienced immigration lawyer, and then they advise you that, look, it's tough luck, but for whatever reason, regardless of what you do, you will never get green card here because you did X, Y, and Z that lead to a permanent bar, and then there's no relief under the law. Meaning, even if you're married, there is no relief whatsoever. For folks like those, I can understand the need that if they said, I am not going to remove myself, and then I will be here until the law caught up to me, and then they send me back home. Because for those people, they understand that, well, I have no choice. If I leave, I will never come back. So I am not going to make it easy for the government. Those people, I can see the rationale behind the decision why they, stays here for that long. And then there are people in our community, in our society, who are actually part of those those category group of people. But there are others who actually have genuine, path to, adjustment to green card. But they don't understand. Sometimes I would sit and then assess their situations and then talk to them. And I'm like, excuse me, I forget to put my... Sorry about that, folks. My phone was ringing. I forgot to put it on Do Not Disturb. But if anyone is trying to call my cell phone, just send me a text on Facebook or Messenger, and then I will respond over there. And then that would be best option going forward, rather than calling me. One second, I just need to go over the questions, and then because I have a lot of questions that people are asking, I just wanted to make sure I get those things right. I believe another gentleman just texted me telling me that they were deported and then they were not put in shackle. That is true. Like I said, it depends on what the circumstance of your deportation is. This is what people have to understand in the U.S. If you enter with a visa, there are two people who, like removal, this is how it works in the U.S. There are those that were actually inspected and admitted, meaning you actually come to the doors of the U.S., you knocked on it, and then somebody answered and say, hey, it's okay, you can come in, they welcome you. And then at some point they tell you that, look, your guest status is over, we don't want you here, you ought to leave, and then you fail to leave. For those people, if the government is trying to remove them from the U.S., it's called, removable offenses, meaning at some point in time you were welcome in the U.S., either as a non-immigrant visa or you're actually a green card holder, and then now you did something that make the government to, remove you from the Gambia, to the Gambia rather. And then there are other folks, let's say, who, are trying to seek admission, meaning, let's say you came all the way to the border and then your visa get revoked, or you entered without inspection, EWI, and then you are in the U.S. Even though we both know that you are in the U.S., we can see you, you live in this, we saw each other every day. Physically, you are in the U.S., but legally you are not, because you have never been inspected and admitted. That's what you have to understand. For those people, if the government is removing them, it's called, inadmissibility bar. They get removed under 212. And then for people who actually were given permission to enter the U.S., they are called deportable alien, meaning at some point in time, we allowed them to enter our country. They did one thing or another that make us to, remove them from the country. What are those things? If you are here on F1 visa, and let's say, you are only authorized to work 20 hours a week during school, when school is in session, and then let's say you work 40 hours a week, you engage in unauthorized employment, or you are allowed to take 12 units per semester, and then you don't get approved status from your DSO, and then you fell below the 12 credit, now you run out of status. If immigration wanted to remove you from the US, they would just file NTA against you and then try to remove you for actually violating the status of your visa. That's one aspect of immigration. Or you are someone who is a green card holder, and then you committed a crime involving moral turpitude. Let's say you just went to the store and then stole candy, and then it's within 5 years of having that green card, and then the maximum sentence, you could get an imprisonment sentence of at least 1 year. That's a deportable offense. Let's say that's the scenario, and then you went through all facets of immigration. You have no relief, you lose your case, and then the government is trying to remove you, and then for some reason you come in contact with ICE, and then ICE get hold of you. People like those, they are low risk assessment. If they are removing you, they won't put you in shackle. And I'm telling you, I'm not saying that people were not put in shackle, especially this batch that were sent to the Gambia. I don't know what are the circumstances of their case, but I am telling you, I have clients, individuals who've been escorted to the airport, and then while they've been escorted, I'll be on phone with ICE officers in the car, talking to them, in fact, arranging whether we could have a third country for them to be removed to, rather than the Gambia. Those things happen. And then sometimes, depending on how they transit to the US, we would agree on a third country. So I am not saying that people would not be put in shackle. If they feel like you are a danger to yourself or a danger to others in a commercial flight, they will put you in shackle. So what can you do? Well, you have two options. If you are in custody and then they wanted to remove you, you can say, no, I will not enter the flight, I won't go, and then I would expect ICE officers to respect the law. But this is what happened. If there's a final order of removal, and U.S. Immigration and Custom Enforcement have your travel document, on hand, and then they wanted to deport you to the Gambia, and then you said, no, you won't enter that commercial flight. Let's say you've been, loud and mysterious. They will not put you in flight. They won't take you back to Gambia. But this is what will happen. You triggered another law. Because if there's a clear path to removal, there's a final order of removal, and then you refuse to go, there are penalties for that. The U.S. government can prosecute you criminally for violating, the 8 U.S.C. 1253. How does that work? Depending on your circumstance, you can look at 4 to 10 years in federal prison. You can go serve your 4 years in federal prison. Let's say, you know, you refuse to go and then they have your travel document with you and then you refuse to go. They could indict you and then, you know, put you in criminal prosecution. You can get convicted for 4 years. Let's say you spend 4 years in federal prison here. At the end of the 4 year, they secure another travel document and then you refuse to go. The same thing would come back and then you cannot scream double jeopardy. And I'm telling you, that's constitutional. And then if you think, you know, it's not happening, it happened to Rwandans. She was sentenced to 70 months in federal prison. And then in those trials, you don't get to tell the judge that, well, if you remove me to my country, this is what will happen to me. The trial is only limited to, is there a valid deportation order? And do the government have the right document to execute the deportation order? Yes. So let's even say that the Gambia is stolen, or, you know, they give deportation orders to others and then you still refuse to go. You can go to federal prison for that. So these are some of the things you need to understand. You know, it's unfortunate that, you know, there's a new administration in the US that actually, you know, is enforcing the laws strictly rather than focusing on, you know, enforcement priorities set by the prior administration, like people with terrorist ties or convicted felons or, you know, higher misdemeanor violators. But now you could be someone with a mere traffic violation and then you know, run into immigration's radar. When I say a mere traffic violation, I don't mean that if you drive without a license, they would deport you, unless, of course, you already have a prior order of removal. That's what I mean. So people have to understand the context I'm using this thing. Most people with final order of removal have the time, the way they come in contact with law enforcement is either you are driving and then you commit a traffic infraction and then you happen to be in an area where they do immigration reporting, they would automatically report you to immigration. Or if you live in our Madison, city of Madison here, and then I know from the prosecutor's office, their policy is for these ordinance violations and then low misdemeanors, they never do immigration reporting on that. But you commit domestic violence or serious felony, they would put immigration hold on you. Madison does that. I can speak for Madison. Now, other states like New York, like huge sanctuary states, regardless of what criminal offense you do, they would never, you know, surrender you to immigration. But immigration officers can wait you outside the courthouse and then, because it's, you know, the federal government, they have jurisdiction over there, and then arrest you. Those things can happen. That's, you know, the two things people need to, you know, separate from what is happening right now. And then to some of the questions people are asking, whether, you know, how do ICE find people? Well, this is what I want you to understand. If you have a final order of removal and then immigration wants you out of this country, regardless of where you are, if they want to find you, they will find you. So stop worrying yourself about issues like, I'm not going to drive, or you don't want to file your taxes, or giving wrong addresses. Because anytime you do that, it prejudices your case. Because under INA 265, Section 265, the law says that if you are not a U.S. citizen, anytime you move, within 10 days of moving, you must, you know, notify immigration officers of a change of address. Do we do this? No. Nobody cares. We think it's irrelevant. It's a misnomer. Who cares about it? But how does these things affect you? Well, let's say you are someone who is trying to ask for a discretionary, you know, relief from the court or somewhere else. All your immigration history come into play. Because these are some of the things they will look at. Are you someone who, you know, comply with the law? Are you someone who is diligent in doing what the law says? They will come back and hurt you. So I'm telling you, you know, hiding your addresses or whatnot, it's not going to help you. If immigration want you, they would, you know, get you. Just because you give immigration your correct address doesn't mean that's how they get you. If they want to get you, they will get you. How? Immigration have a fugitive task force unit. So if someone is given a final order of removal, and then let's say they send you bag and baggage later, and then you refuse to go and then surrender yourself to immigration, they could send you bag and baggage, tell you that, hey, we want you to leave. And then let's say you were like, to hell with that, I'm not going. What happened? If they get tired, they send your file to the Fugitive Enforcement Unit. And if those boys want you, they will get you. Even if you never file taxes, you crawl under. If they want to find you, they will find you. Forget about the phones, the GPS. No. I have cases where immigration, if they feel like you are a high priority target, they will stalk you. They will find you. You know, they have officers camp at people's door. If they want something, they will get you. I'm telling you. I handle cases where, you know, the manner and then the way immigration, you know, do stakeouts to get this individual, is incomprehensible. You wouldn't believe it. They have so much resources. So do not worry yourself or try to, scare each other into not doing what you're supposed to do. Because the worst you could do is not file your taxes. Because I can guarantee you, Uncle Sam will never play when it comes to taxes. The easiest way to go to jail here, refuse to pay your federal taxes. Under Section 61 of IRS, income from any source derived, it's considered income. And, wealth from any source is considered income under Section 61. So unless the code says it's not income, I'm not a tax expert, unless, tax code actually exempt that, you must file report income tax on that. If you don't, they will come after you. That's what I'm telling you. So your best option is follow the other parts of the law that you can, and then don't worry about things that are outside your purview or your control, because there are some things you can't. It's just unfortunate, but that's how things work over here. So that's what I want folks to understand regarding those areas too. Excuse me, and then I have to catch up with all these questions. Another gentleman asks what chances people have with withholding of removal. Well, if you have a withholding of removal, there are two kinds of, let me put it this way. There are two kinds of withholding of removals. You can have deferred withholding under Convention Against Torture, or you can have a regular withholding under Section 241 of INA. Let's say the classic withholding would be, let's say you are a Gambian. For whatever reason, you file asylum, and then your asylum was untimely because the laws changed. The law says that you must file asylum within 1 year of arrival. And then you did not. And then there are no legitimate reason why you did not file within that 1 year of arrival. The asylum office refer your case to immigration court. You went to court. You argue. You still lose on the 1 year statutory bar. But because you are someone who suffered past persecution, or the judge believed that it's more than possible that if they return you back to your country, you will be persecuted for one, on account of one of the 5 enumerated grounds, then the law, it's by law, they must give you what they call withholding of removal. What that does is the judge would order you deported, to your country. Like, I ordered you removed to Gambia, but I will withhold this removal because I believe that if you go back, you will be harmed. For those people, you shouldn't worry that ICE will come after you and then remove you. No, because even though there is a deportation order on you, it has been withheld by an immigration judge. It's only an immigration judge who can undo that. So which means that you get to live here in the U.S. indefinitely, unless that is, something happened and then they change that. And then you would get work authorization every year. The only problem is, the caveat is, you cannot travel outside the U.S. Now, if you wanted to, you can ask for advance parole from ICE office if they exercise discretion and give you advance parole. There are still risks associated with that. I don't want to, talk about all of those things and then confuse people further. But I'm telling you, at least for you, you shouldn't worry that, ICE will come at your door and then remove you and then deport you to the Gambia. But at least you get to stay here and then work here legally. There are a couple of ways you can change those circumstances. Let's say during those time you happen to get married, and then, or your kids turn 21. Let them file an I-130 petition for you if they are U.S. citizens. If that get approved, go back to the court. Yes, of course, this would be after, the 90 days that I mentioned earlier that, those deadline has passed. But more than often, for withholding of removal, in all my assessments, judges tend to, reopen cases and then terminate them if they know now you have a clear path to green card, meaning there's a prima facie eligibility. You have no criminal history whatsoever. The only reason you do not have a green card on your hand, it's because your case is with immigration court. You had that order of removal. So if you file a motion to reopen, half the time, judges would actually reopen your cases. Now, it doesn't mean they must. And then I have been fortunate in all the withholding cases that I did with Gambians and non-Gambians. All those cases were reopened. The judge actually reopened it. And then most of my cases, ICE actually would, DHS, attorneys would actually join my motion to reopen because they would understand that, there are no other issues. The only reason they were not granted asylum is because of the 1 year bar or something else would happen. Even under Trump administration, they don't fight me too much on that. They would actually join my motion to reopen. Those people, you can actually reopen your case and then pursue green card. But let's say in the event that they refuse to reopen your case, you can apply for what they call unlawful presence waivers here. You apply those things. Once they get approved, send your case to a consular processing. You can actually leave the country and then come back. You would actually come back. And I'm telling you, I assisted people who actually leave and then come back. Unless if there are some other issues that are involved. It might involve a lot of money and time, but that would still actually, it's still possible. You can actually, leave the country and then come back. That's something, you can do. That's for withholding of involved people right now. And then the other question that people asked me, and then this was yesterday, and then it has to do specifically with Gambia. Usually I defer to Satan when it comes to FGM issues. People call me and then a lady frantically and tell me that, well, this whole deportation thing is going on, and then I wanted to file asylum, but I am advised that I can't because I made 2 trips to the US. I never filed, and then this is my 3rd trip or 2nd trip. So they said I can file. Well, that's an inaccurate information. That is wrong. There is no law on the book that says that if you travel to the US 2-3 times and then you want to file asylum the 3rd time, you can't. Or if you file, they will deny you. That's just, bogus. It's just malarkey. That is not true. You can't file. What the law says, whenever you enter, meaning from your last entry, you have until a period of 1 year, unless, of course, if there are legal exceptions, for you to file. That's what you could do. So you can file within that 1 year. Now, if you have been here like multiple times, like 5-6 times, those are factors that, maybe adjudicating officers could take into question to see whether your claim actually arise from your first trip to the US, and then why don't you file? Those, it could go to credibility issue, but it has nothing to do with filing. You can actually file, and then that would not prejudice your case. It's just factors, adjudicators will look into, and if it goes to court, depending on what side of the aisle you are on, you can argue on both sides. File your application and then get protection. If you have a legitimate right to file, file, I'm telling you. And then the other, prompt to that question, she asked me, Gambia banned FGM, and I'm happy for that. I give a lot of kudos to people who are actually, advocating for that ban, and I think it should. But just because most countries, like unless if you're doing this job, you wouldn't understand. Another lady was asking me, well, FGM is banned, so they say there is no FGM asylum. There is no such thing called FGM asylum. I mean, it's the basis. But it doesn't mean, just because a law has been passed in the Gambia that says that it cannot be practiced, doesn't mean people who are in the country and then they wanted to file, maybe that's their premises, whatever they believe. Because remember, asylum it has a subjective and objective component. They can't file. Yes, you can file. I'm telling you, even if the laws have been banned, it's not much about whether there is a law in the book that says this particular practice should be stopped. What the law looked at, are you someone, because this is what you have to understand, to qualify as a refugee, you must be someone who is afraid or unwilling to go back to your country because either you were harmed, something happened to you in the past, or you believe that if you go back, something would happen. So if you understand it that way, most of our sisters and our mothers were victims of these horrible acts. So that's considered past persecution. So if you just advise that person that, well, it has been banned there, now you cannot file, that's inaccurate information. Because under the law, if you looked at it, that person actually met their burden with a doctor report to file. Now the government can argue that there is a fundamental changes, future persecution is not possible again. If they go back to Gambia, nothing would happen to them now. That is true, but that's only for the judge to decide whether what happened to that person is so severe enough to even give them humanitarian asylum. So do not waste your time or listen to people, unless if you sit with an immigration attorney that advise you that don't do this. Don't listen to advice from people who do not have a legal background in this area. Because most lawyers you in fact see, they will tell you, well, I'm not an expert in immigration, see an immigration lawyer. They will refer you because they know immigration laws are very, very complex. And then you actually have to have an understanding of the area to know what you are talking about. So talk to an immigration attorney. If they advise you, don't do this thing, and then you heed to their advice and then something happened, the good thing is you would actually have relief, and you can actually get a second bite at the apple on the ineffective assistance of counsel, because now at least a legal professional or a legal person at least advise you to do something that they don't know what they're talking about. That would give you more protection than my cousin told me not to file. So that's what I want people to understand in response to that questions. And then another important question that the gentleman asked, that's very important. He asked, well, how do people are Gambian? Like, if you apply for asylum, don't you put your country of origin over there? Yes, that is true. And then, in fact, that's the basis how U.S. try to verify the citizenship of most people. Any relief you file, because we are all considered alien, forget about the fact that we all get a certificate of naturalization that you are a U.S. citizen. The one thing you wouldn't know is if you looked at on top of that naturalization certificate, even though now you are no longer an alien under immigration law, you still have your A number on that certificate. So let's not kid each other. Anytime you apply for relief with immigration, whether it's for green card or whatnot, they ask you to state your nationality, and then all this immigration form you are filling, you fill it under penalty of perjury. So if you said you are from the Gambia, the government would take your word for it. Well, we believe you. You said you're from the Gambia. That's your country of origin. So I go to court every day, take pleadings in terms of NTA, when cases get every day. I respectfully, decline to designate a country of removal. Of all my clients, if I file asylum, whether they are filing defensive asylum or affirmative asylum, if we're in court, pleadings, I can tell you, 98% of the time, the government there, NTA, the charges are correct. You would admit to all the charges, concede removability. Like, yes, you are not a citizen of the US, you are a national of the Gambia, yes, all those things. And then the judge would ask you, Mr. Lawyer, would you designate Gambia for your client in case if we order, that person deported to go back to the Gambia? Of course, I would say no. But the government, under the law says that the government can, representing the Attorney General, could designate your country that you put on your form. You said you are Gambian, they would designate Gambia as your country of removal. And that's what happens. So what I think our government can do in terms of, this whole noises in terms of deportation, what can the Gambia do? Well, it has some politics to it too. That's true. It's a new government. And then one can argue that I saw a gentleman who posted that, the government could at least, do some politics and then negotiate some time to give these travel documents and then let them know, we are a new government. I think that's a legitimate argument. It's a new government. Everyone is screaming that our passport was abused severely before for whatever reason. So the new government could at least put in a colorable argument that, look, we understand the need to take up responsibilities and then take our citizen. But we're a new government. We have to see the extent of the damage to see how much our nationality was, prostituted. So if we can verify the legitimacy of all those passports, then we would start issuing others. That would buy them time. And then while they are buying time, I think what ought to be done, rather than focusing on don't give travel document, what we as citizens should actually ask for, what is more reasonable, would set up centers. There are people who have been living here for 10, 15, 20 years. And then maybe when they immigrated, they do not have much family members in Gambia. Now, most of their families are in the US. If you send those people back to Gambia, they would have to be reoriented. They have to go through some kind of resocialization again. So let's say they are going back, they don't have close family members over there, even though Gambia is all connected, but they might not necessarily have close family members to go back to. What our government can do, take taxpayers' money and then set up temporary shelters or hotels, whatnot, put it over there. If people come, do intakes. How many Gambians were returned? Okay, we know 10 Gambians were returned. And then ask for some of these data. Okay, how many of these Gambians, were removed because for whatever reason, they were overstay visa holders. Or maybe because they are removed because of security threat. Let's be real. This is national security. Okay. How many of those people, what are their risk assessment? Are they being removed because of, criminal offenses? Because the government ought to know. Africa, we take everything for granted. Do those assessments, understand their priors, understand their propensity to danger, know all those things, and then at least have record too. So what kind of social amenities they need? People, within that 3 days, if family members wanted to come and volunteer, like, these are our people, we will support them. That's commendable, and then that's what we're supposed to do. And then the others who do not have immediate places to relocate, provide services for them. That's what they should do. The question is not don't issue travel document. Provide service for them to integrate in the community. And then people, for whatever reason, if you, have their A files and then think that they might have propensity to danger, those are people you ought to help and then, rehabilitate to help. Because you just forget about them, leave them. You think you are worried about not issuing travel document? Wait until you send someone who has propensity to danger and then they have no means of survival. They would commit crimes. And wait until the backlash get back to you regarding the citizen if people start doing some things. Those are some of the things people have to understand. Someone actually put the embassy in DC should look after its citizens. Everybody have different experience. And then my experience with the Gambian embassy in DC specifically, I never call and then let them know that, hey, it's me, you know who I am. I'm saying no. And then anytime I call, even if I don't get their phone numbers, most of the time if I call and then I wanted to inquire on my client status, whether travel documents have been issued, that way I know, or what strategies to take. They answered my calls, and then I never have to go through, the chain of authority to speak to anyone. Most of the time, I don't know whether they are receptionists. I don't even ask for their name. And then I would give them my name if I call, and then I don't have to explain who I am, but I'll tell them, hey, I'm XYZ, I'm a legal representative of X, and then I'm, inquiring on their file. If you would need a copy of my G28 to verify that, I should get those informations, that would be fine. But half the time, they pick my call, they never stall me, and then they would tell me, yes, a request has been made on X date, and we are working on to verify their citizenship, or no, these people call you late. We already issued a travel document this date, and then I will know if I have to file a stay with the court. But they always pick my call and let me know what's going on. That's my experience with the Gambian embassy in DC, and then my official experience with them. So I never had any stalling issues with them or try to hide the ball for me. In fact, I think now they have a system where you can call, you give them the A numbers, they would help you as much as they can to let you know if that person, there's an order of removal. It's not the embassy's fault to give a travel document. Some of the people that have been arrested, remember, if you're applying for asylum, one of the fundamental requirements for asylum, you must prove nationality, because if not, you will lose your case, unless if you are claiming stateless. So in order to prove nationality, you must provide original documents, either original birth certificate, original passport, or a copy of a passport with original birth certificate, because you have to do that. That's one of the fundamental elements to meet your case, one of the legal requirements. So most of the people that go through, especially, this thing, even immigration proceeding, like if you apply for adjustment or whatnot, you submit document, but you reserve, immigration reserve the right to inspect original document at your interview. And anyone who went through immigration process in the US here would understand that even for marriage interview, you copy your document, send it. Once you go to interview, they ask for those original marriage certificate, your original passport, because they verify it. Those are documents. They can verify your citizenship. They have it. They looked at it. So they know you have those documents that made you a citizen of that country. The question that remains, if our passport expired, for me, in my opinion, the embassy did one step towards verifying citizenship by going to the detention center. That's commendable. But I think they should also have a liaison, maybe an office that would help them, either immigration department, and then they have a legal office at the embassy that would kind of, put Gambians from Gambia, that's our graduate, and put a legal division over there. If all requests for citizenship comes, let those legal officers look at the constitutional requirement for citizenship. If those people, prove those requirements, and then you can issue like, well, we have no choice, but we'll, give those documents to them. And then if the U.S. government cannot prove the requirement for citizenship, then we'll be like, look, we wanted to help you. You made a formal request, and then we answered diligently, but we cannot verify this because of X, Y, and Z. At least that would help the Gambia government in terms of, let's say, if they don't accept deportees and then the U.S. wanted to exercise Section 243D, they could say, no, we reasonably comply with our requirement. And then if you wanted to give this ban, at least I think diplomatically we would take it up with the, our State House could talk to White House about those diplomatic relations. And like, we uphold our responsibilities. And then if you still want to be unreasonable, that could affect our foreign relationship. And then we also would do what we ought to do. Those things I can understand. Those are, legitimate argument. But anything sort of that, we are just getting emotional. And then that's how I think we ought to handle that. That's one of those things. And then And then another question that someone asked, they said they have work permit and then since 2013, and then they haven't renewed it because they don't have work. Well, work permit only give you authorization to work here. And then if you have an expired EAD, my advice would be apply for a new one. Because if your employer started, strict compliance with the law, you might be out of work, and then that could actually affect and hinder you. So that's something, you ought to know. So renew your work permit, even if you're not working, because now work permit renewals can take up to 6 months. And then unless if you fall under one of the categories where they issue 2-year work permit, most work permits are valid for a year. And then if renewal takes 6 months, that could mean that you might be out of work for a very long time. That's something you guys have to understand. I would strongly advise that at least you renew those things right away. So those are things you can do to help yourself. Okay. Thing. All right, I have to peruse some of these questions because some of them I already spoke about them, and then they might be redundant. Okay. Someone asked they are still waiting for their interview. I don't know if you would be a little bit more specific. If it's asylum, this is what you have to understand. As of February 1st, 2018, USCIS actually, they eliminated the asylum bulletin board. What does that mean? Before, you could at least anticipate or suggest at what point you will be interviewed. And of course, we looked at the bulletin board and we will tell you that, okay, Office X is interviewing applications that were filed on or before, this date. Now, after, they have eliminated the asylum bulletin board, the new approach is people who application filed within the first 20 days would be given preference to interview. It's unfair, but that's the new policy. Now, you can file your application and then be waiting for 3 years. Someone filed right now, based on this new memorandum, if someone filed application within 20 days of their application, they said they wanted to interview them. So you might see a lot of people that are just filing right now, getting interviews, and then your case has been pending for 3 years without an interview. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with your case. What the immigration officers are doing right now, they said for them to, cut up with the backlog, what they wanted to do is they would start with applications that are filed last, file first got interviewed. But what they are not telling you is this. It's a preemptive strike. They wanted to address, applications that are just filed right away because most people, they do not have a lot of evidence to submit with their application at the same time. Meaning you want to file a bare bone application and then 2-3 months down the road, you could get your evidences and then beef up your case. What immigration is trying to do, what this new procedure is all about, if they could interview you within 20 years, that way they could fret out frivolous applications. You file your application, within 20 days, let's say you do not have the evidences, and then you say, oh, no, I cannot interview right now. I don't have most of my evidences, and I don't want them to refer my case to court right now. I will postpone my interview, and then they can give me a later date. Good, that's what they want, because if you postpone, you affirmatively stop your asylum clock. How does that affect you? They don't want you to get work permit. Because if you file your asylum application, your case must be pending for 150 days before you can accrue enough time to apply for employment authorization. Now, if you file within 30 days, they call you for an interview, and then you say, oh, no, I don't have much of my evidence because I was trying to file this thing, and then later I can actually get my evidence. The moment you made the request to reschedule, you stop your clock. Your clock gets stopped at 20 or 30 days. And then the clock will not restart until you get scheduled for another interview. That could take about a year or two. So in those years, you could be frustrated here without employment, no legitimate. You will be here legally, of course, no one will remove you. But you might be frustrated to the extent that you might even self-deport. Because if you have no right to employment authorization and you cannot work, it will be very difficult to live here. And that's the whole point about it. So what you can do is, if you get interviewed, you just file right now and you feel you are not ready, I would still advise, go for the interview. The worst thing that would happen is the officers will refer your case to immigration court. And most of the courts right now, there is a backlog over there. If your case go to court, the likelihood is going to take at least 2 or 3 years. But while before they, schedule you for even your first master calendar hearing, you might accrue enough days to get your employment authorization. That way you could be working and then work towards something else. Yes, your case is in, it kind of get fast-tracked to court, but at least, you never stop your clock. At least you could have those right to employment days. Those days will accrue, and then you can actually apply for your employment permit and then get it on time. That's how you can help yourself. But if you made a request to reschedule that hearing, that would affirmatively stop your clock, and then you won't be able to, get work permit until that, clock is reset, and then that could take years or, months, and then that would be something, that could affect your livelihood in the US. That's something you have to understand. Okay, I have another question that someone. The chance of someone moving to Canada. Well, I would advise that you move to Canada legally, and then I cannot advise that you violate Canada immigration law or enter there unlawfully. But apply for a visa and go there. That's how people would naturally go to Canada, and then apply for a visa or at least have some right to go to Canada. Now, speaking from experience, I do handle cases from Eastern Africa where I know clients who will come here, and then as arriving aliens, we do their cases. Some of them, they are for whatever reason they are not granted asylum, and then they will immigrate to Canada and then file another application over there, get granted. I talk to them, I've seen those things happen, but I cannot advise you to actually illegally move to Canada and then apply benefits over there. That's what I can do. Yeah, the travel ban. Someone asked the question, the decision about the travel ban. Well, it could be. It's. I'm not gonna say that that's not a legitimate question. A gentleman asked, the decision to reissue travel document to government is because government wanted to lift the travel ban. Yes, I think that's one of the main motive. I would think that's the predicate reason why the government is issuing a travel document, because even though it only affects senior civil servants and then I think their immediate families, I'm not privy to the conversation the foreign department would have with the US, but if there is, it's a carrot and stick game. If the government threatened them to, extend that, ban to the entire populace, that would affect every Gambian. So that could be an incentive for them to remove the ban. Maybe that threat was never there. It might only be limited to senior government officials and then their family members. That is still possible. And then the only thing I would take from that question is if embassy issue travel document in a haste, then that would be unfortunate. At least I would expect that they do their due diligence and then verify citizenship or get in touch with Interior Department and then what may you to verify certain citizenships of Gambians. What I do know of, if you have a final order of removal and then or you are going through proceeding and then you do not have a lawyer and then you feel like for one reason or the other you might lose your cases, you could take proactive decision and then talk to the embassy ahead of time and let them know whether you believe you are a Gambian or not. If you think you're not, write it. Whatever, as long as you do it legally, just make sure, you could provide evidence. No, they might try to secure my travel document. I'm either pursuing my appeal or I don't, I'm not genuinely a Gambian, or maybe I get this document because of XYZ, but my Gambianship, is at, my citizenship is at question. So before you issue anything, just make sure you do something about it. That might help you. Those are some of the things, you can do. But, if you wait until they issue it after the fact, it would be a little bit difficult for you to help yourself. So you have to make proactive decisions. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying the decisions they are making doesn't affect life. It does. Removal is affecting lives here. Families have been torn apart. I'm a Gambian, and then I just because I don't come out here and then break down doesn't mean I do not understand. I visited detention centers. Most of these people, you ask them, they will let you know. I seen them in detention centers. I collect calls from them, and then only God knows how much money I write off on taxes every year from collect calls in prison, speaking to Gambians. People that I met, I don't know them. They don't even have to hire me. Anytime I went to see another client, I would sit there with another Gambian, make sure review their documents, what they can do. I will talk to them, whether they are Gambian, Ghanaians, across the board. They call me to sometimes I'll go there weekends. I'll volunteer and then help them complete forms. And then I don't have to come out here and then parade that on social media or whatnot. But I'm telling you, we can all do something to help them. The only thing that behooves me, the only thing that saddens me is if we see people who are here, us Gambians here or Gambia, and then trying to exploit the situation of those who have been removed or my appeal to the community would be a little bit sensitive about their issues, and then respect their privacies just because they are removed. I'm not saying it's not newsworthy, because we have to give media their right. It is newsworthy to report that X number of Gambians have been removed from the United States based on their immigration laws and then sent to the Gambia. And then I think the government also would be doing us just service by, publicly acknowledging that, yes, we received X number of Gambians from the United States, because, one reason or the other, this is why, they were sent here. And then, you could let people know that. But do not delve into the issues of, their names and then where they live or what they have been doing here. That's not for us to do, unless if they give you express consent to do so, or they want you to help them for a cause. But we should not sit on social media like, oh my God, the mighty Sadio has been deported to Gambia, as if that's going to add value to my life or is going to make me feel more important. Or you don't know the circumstance while he's been, he's removed. And then just because he's removed today, it can happen to you. There are criminal denaturalization statute and then civil denaturalization statutes. And then immigration law is a little bit funny. You don't want to delve into somebody's personals and then trying to make it look like it's a misfortune for them, or make it look like it's a gain for you because they've been removed. I think that's the only thing we can separate from this thing. My take would be, at least I wish people could respect the privacy of these people. We do not exploit for political gains or whatnot. Yes, it's newsworthy. People have to report that Gambians have been removed, and then Gambians living in the U.S. should be alarmed, and then to know what they can do to better their situation, and then take proactive decisions to regularize your status. And then if there is no way to legitimate path to legalization in the U.S., have a plan B. Plan ahead of time before ICE would come to you. It will be more inhuman. I know it sounds very cruel, coming out of me saying that, no, but you have to have plan B. Because unless this administration changes or something happens, if they continue to do aggressive enforcement, one way or the other, they will get you. So do plan B, plan ahead, better your situation. Have a game plan, like this is what I will do. I'll go back to my country on my own accord, on my own merit, and then I will do something else. That is something, you can do and then help yourself. That's what I want people to understand. And then if you are one of those classes, you felt like, well, I have no other, way of getting papers. I'll wait here until the law, catches up to me, and then I can go. Those things would happen. And then other comments about people leaving their belongings here, and then it won't be squandered. I don't know how often people, follow news, but just as recently, one of the U.S. immigration, the government lawyer in Seattle, the head office, one of the chief counsel in Seattle, was indicted, and then for allegedly using, money and then, proceeds of immigrants that were deported. So my point is, if ICE, you happen to be one of these people who were unfortunately removed, and then you still have affairs in the country, and then you don't have close family members or immediate relative in the U.S. that can help you, execute a power of attorney, give it to someone you trust, a friend you can trust, or hire a lawyer, execute a power of attorney, and then they would run down your affairs for you, your bank account, whatnot, and then that money would get to you. It doesn't mean you will lose it. And then any property, you don't just lose those things. Just because they remove you doesn't mean the ownership to those property, extinguishes. Don't for once believe that. Your property, that's your legitimate property. You can still be in Gambia and then, profit from it. Do something with it. The law doesn't stop that. That's what I want people to know. So that's something, you can help yourself with. Okay. Someone wanted to know whether you can apply for naturalization if you have a pending I-751 petition. The answer is yes, but the outcome might be different. Let's say if your pending petition to remove condition on your green card is a joint petition with your spouse, and then you are still married, then if you file N400, they will adjudicate that N400. The moment they are adjudicating that N400, they would adjudicate your 751 petition. And then that might even make things a little bit faster. But if you are filing your 751 petition based on a waiver, let's say, your marriage ended in a divorce, or for whatever reason you are using one of those waivers, you can still file N400 naturalization. The problem is they will not adjudicate your naturalization application until they adjudicate your 751, your N751 petition. So, but if for whatever reason your petition has been pending for a lot of years, like 3 years, 4 years, without any action from the government, and then you tried everything, and then I think your best option would be to file a mandamus suit in the federal court to make sure, you know, there's a decision on that. That would be your best option, you know. Somebody wanted to know what's the role of the government in deportation of Gambians. Well, the role of the government is to issue travel document, and then that would be their major role. And then call it a blame game or not, the government actually affected your travel. That's true. No one is going to, you know, disagree with that. But for, you know, a travel document from the Gambia government, of course, you will still be here. The question is in what status, whether they would release you on supervision, or whether ICE would classify you as a danger to public and refuse to, you know, leave you, you stay in detention, or whether you would pursue other means. But you will be here, that's true. And then, but just 2 days ago, the U.S. Supreme Court actually came up with a new decision regarding mandatory detention. And then this is what happened for the case that has been pending for so long. The new decision, the court remanded the case saying that you do not have automatic right to, you know, bond every 6 months. Because under the Ninth Circuit, what because I wanted to explain this thing in layman terms. This is what happened. Let's say you are fighting immigration, and then for whatever reason, the law classifies you as mandatory detainee, and then you have to be in detention, and while your case is ongoing. So there is a class action lawsuit against the government claiming that because we are not criminal, you cannot detain us indefinitely. If you do, you violated our, you know, constitutional rights. And then the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal says, yes, they should get periodic bond hearing, meaning if you want to deport people, or people are in detention for whatever reason while they are going through immigration court, after every 6 months, you should do a custody determination, see whether they should be in detention or they should be released periodically every 6 months. That's what the court says. That's the most relevant word. It went to U.S. Supreme Court, and then the court rejected that argument, remanded the case. They said, non-citizen, we are not entitled to periodic, you know, bond hearing. The only exception to that is people who have final order of removal. And then anyone else going through immigration, you don't have a right to periodic, you know, bond hearing every 6 months. But what the court left open is this, the constitutional issue, whether your prolonged detention, whether, you know, government putting you in detention for 1 year, 2 years, that could, you know, that affects some provision of the constitution. You know, that's a question where, you know, the court sent back to the lower court to discuss that. So the issue is for most folks that are going through immigration or that have final order, even assuming, this is what you have to understand. I know this is a difficult choice, but even absent a travel document, there are chances that if you are, you know, a mandatory detainee, you might be in detention for a very long time. Those are things, you know, you have to be aware of. Just not getting a travel document is that's not just a clear win. That's one step, but still now there are other, you know, factors you have to look at. You could still be in detention, and then unless, you know, if you fight aggressively at the federal courts, maybe that would get you out. But that's something you have to understand. But yes, the government role is to issue travel document, and then they have done that. And I'm telling you, what I see from this new government, they will play by the book for the rules here. Whether, you know, whatever the reasonings are, but they will play by the book. If they can verify your citizenship, I genuinely believe they will issue your travel document and then let you go. So you cannot wait and then think that you would rely that this government would come and then do a U-turn. I don't see that happening. So that's something people ought to be aware. All right, I think that would be. Yes, someone asked a question, if they have a pending asylum case, can they change their status based on marriage to a U.S. citizen? Yes, you can do that, even if the case is pending. My only advice is do not withdraw your asylum application. Pursue both concurrently. Once you get an interview based on your marriage applications, and then the petition has been removed, you can, you know, file a request to withdraw your asylum. The reasons are assuming the marriage fell apart, and you still have some form of protection in the country, and then you will still get employment on that. Because if the marriage never went through, and then you already withdrew your application, you'll be here without status, and then that 1 year clock would have expired on you. So that would be my advice. Keep both until, you know, you get the application. Somebody wanted to know, they are still in removal proceedings since 2012, and then they went for their last year and it was moved to 2019. Yes, immigration courts are going through routine backlogs right now. I have cases scheduled for 2020, 2021, so it's not unusual. The only thing is people without genuine cases or, prima facie cases to win, if they're in immigration court in asylum, if their case get pushed to 2020, they love it because they get to stay here working. And then during that time, maybe they might have a second route to application. Now, for those with legitimate applications, it's frustrating. You have a clear way, you have a strong case, you could actually win your case, but now you have to wait for that long. And then during that wait period, changes can happen in your country that can actually prejudice your application. That is actually true. And then it's unfortunate, but that's what it is. But the best way you can do, if you have a lawyer, or if not, you can file a motion to advance those hearings. And then if the court has some kind of opening, or for whatever legitimate reason you think there are, or if you have kids that might face out, file a motion to advance. Judges will entertain it. It might be a short hearing, but you can do that. Well, I'm not going to go into specific who are the people they are removing. I can't tell you. The only thing I can tell you, they have a final order of removal. The only reason they would be removed, there's a final order of removal. But the reason why, we shouldn't speculate to that. And then I don't think the show goes to that. The other question is, your relative have been detained for more than a year, but ICE could not get travel document from the Gambia. What can he do? Well, that one you have to file a petition, a habeas petition with the federal court to have him released. Because unless, depending on what the circumstance of the case is, the government can still argue he's a danger to public. And then I've seen judges arguing that 3 DUIs is considered a danger to public. So it depends on the fact of the cases. So those things you would just have to, take a lawyer and then go to federal court to fight it. That's your only option. Okay. Is a huge. Well, some people now, if you're depending on where you are, immigration have these pilot projects in other areas like Detroit, I think in Charlotte, where what they do is, even if you're in removal proceeding, your case is still ongoing, they make you to report for supervision. And then the only thing is just trying to get, keep a tab on you and know where you are. It might be a little bit of an inconvenience, but it doesn't mean that, you do not have a strong case or whatnot. That's why they're doing that. It's just a pilot program they're trying to do. That way they could keep tabs on people. In the event that there's a final order of removal, they know where you are, I think this is, someone wants to know if it's a law to deport someone even though they have family members in America without any crime. I don't want to get into legality. Crime meaning a violation of a law or ordinance or whatever it is. To Gambians, if you do not commit a criminal offense, you are not committing a crime. And I'm telling you that if you enter the US without any inspection, you committed a crime. Yes, to us, it's just, I just came to this country, I haven't committed anything. My only, problem is without having document. That's a crime, actually, because the law says you must have a visa, or you must have advance parole, or at least, advance permission to enter the US before you come here. So if you are here contrary to the laws of the US, that is a crime in itself. So that could be a basis for government to remove you. So let us not forget that. The crime is a legal term. It doesn't actually mean you have to, steal something or do something for you to be removed from the country. Now, how relevant is that question? Before, under the Obama administration, they have what they call enforcement priorities, 1, 2, 3, 4. People without criminal histories in the US, even if they have a final order of removal, if they have family ties here, immigration do not, enforce removal on them. And then this is what I want other people to know too. If you are someone who have family ties here and then strong equities in the US, like I see some people who are writing, oh, this person has all these things. There's what they call a stay of removal with ICE itself. What you can do, you can file a discretionary stay with ICE. ICE would look at your case and say, okay, even though you have a final order of removal and we're supposed to deport you, but because equities are in your favor, we will not deport you. You pay, I think it's 243 or whatnot. You pay that, but there's a form called I-243. You complete it, and then you send it to Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and then you pay the filing fee. If they exercise discretion and stay your removal, you get to stay here. All those things are available, but you wouldn't know that until you talk to lawyers. These are things you can do. That's something you can do too. Well, if you are someone with if your spouse is a green card holder, they can still file a petition for you. But the problem is you must be in lawful status in America for you to get green card in those categories. The only exceptions are, parents, children under 21, or husband and wives of U.S. citizens. Even if they are, if they enter here lawfully, even if they are out of status, they still, can remain in the country and then get their green card. If your spouse is a green card holder for you, you can't, unfortunately. You must be in valid status, which means you have two options. Wait until your spouse becomes a citizen and then file for your green card, or you can apply for 601A unlawful presence waiver if you are here for more than a year, and then consular process to go and come if you think that it's going to take a lot of years before your wife becomes a citizen. But you can still, become a permanent resident, but there are ways you have to do, it. This question is a little bit vague. You wanted to know if someone applied at U.S. Embassy and then you were told to change your status and then come back and apply. I would need to know more to understand, because whether you're applying for immigrant visa or non-immigrant visa, change of status could be from immigrant status to non-immigrant, or non-immigrant to immigrant status, or from one visa category to another visa category, B1 to F1. So I'm not sure what your question is specifically, so I need to know more to know that. If one is illegal in the US, how long it will take to legalize your status? That's a question I can't answer. It depends, what relief you are applying. It could take anywhere from a year to 10 years. It depends. It depends on immigration is case specific. Everything depends on your specific case. You cannot use someone's example to address your situation. That's something you cannot do. Someone is asking, what is the condition for voluntary return? Voluntary departure is important. There are many Gambians with voluntary departure. The problem is people take voluntary departure without understanding the consequences. And then let's say if you're in immigration court and then you take voluntary departure, the benefit of voluntary departure, if a judge gives that and then you leave the U.S. right away within that period they give you, you avoid a formal removal order, meaning you avoid the stigma of deportation. Under the law, you have not been deported. So which means you do not accrue any 10-year bar. So let's say if you are someone who never overstayed their visa and then you are not, facing any unlawful presence in the U.S., you can actually leave and then go to the embassy the following day to apply for non-immigrant visas, and come back. Or someone can file you come back the following day. That's the benefit of voluntary departure. I only, take those requests for my clients if I know they have another, weapon in their bag. For instance, let's say I know I'm trying to use, they have a U.S. citizen spouse or whatnot, and then I'm trying to adjust them because one reason or the other they entered here unlawfully, or they are here without inspection, and then I want to get voluntary departure to avoid the removal order and then have them go back consular process. I do voluntary departure, but do not take voluntary departure unless you are 110% sure that you are going home. Because the reasons are, if you take voluntary departure and then the judge gave you 90 days or 30 days and then you refuse to leave, Once that deadline expires, that order automatically turns into a removal order. The problem is, if that turns into a removal order, unless there is some legal basis to undo that, even if you get married to a U.S. citizen, there is a 10-year bar on relief, even if you are in the country. You don't even need to leave the country. The law will impose a 10-year bar on any relief while in the U.S. So do not take voluntary departure unless you are absolutely sure you are going home and then you have a plan B. Can you rent your home out if you are deported to pay? Yes. And then if you want, you can. My advice would be, if you have properties in the U.S. and then you are not here, and then you are not sure if people would manage your property well, hire someone to maintain it for you. Or some banks like Comerica, I remember, you can enter into a trust with them, and then they would manage your property for a percentage fee, and then the money goes into your account. They can send it to you. Those are things you can do. Or see a trust lawyer, and then let them prepare a trust document for you, and then make the beneficiary of the trust, your accounts or whatnot, and then have all those monies come there, and then elect a trustee to run your affairs for you while you are outside. But at the same time, that way your money is protected. The trustee cannot steal from your proceeds. You can do that. No, if you are detained for years and then ICE release you, they don't give you status. They just release you on order of supervision, meaning we have detained you for at least, because once your case is over and then you are on deportation and then you haven't appealed, there is what they call the statutory period, and that's 90 days. Within that statutory period, U.S. government must try to deport you to your country. And then if they cannot within that statutory period, and then they can exercise detention for another 90 days, which would be up to 6 months. And then after that, they should release you. They would do a custody determination, and then if you are not a danger to the public, they will release you. When they release you on order of supervision. What that means is, yes, we know you have a final order of removal. Yes, we try diligently to take you back to your country, but your country, for whatever reason, we cannot. So we'll release you on order of supervision. You report to ICE. They could ask you to come every month, every 2 months, every 6 months, or every year. But while you are on that release, and then there's a provision, because you have to fend for yourself. You have to survive here, live. So there is a provision that gives you the opportunity to apply for work permit and then work while you're here. But it doesn't mean you actually have a status. So, and then most of the terms and conditions of order of supervision mean you stay out of trouble, and then you effectively try to secure your own travel document, meaning you have to be writing to your embassy with proofs of letters that you wrote to them, and then you are actually exercising, due diligence to get your own travel document. If the embassy did not give you that document, that's fine, but at least you have to try that. That way, if you go back, for your reporting or your supervision, you can show to the officer that, hey, I have complied with the terms of my order of supervision. I wrote to my embassy, and then they write back, and then they said, I'm not a citizen, but I'm trying. Because if you don't, that would give them another, opportunity to put you back in detention. So if you want to avoid that, that's what you can do. But it doesn't give you any status, Green card lottery is just green card. It's just a raffle, and then if you win it, yes, it's just like anyone who get a green card through marriage or asylum or whatnot. I don't know any settlement funds that the deportees have been given. I don't know, and then I don't want to speculate, but this is what I do know under U.S. law. If you are deported, there is no provision or law that says that if you are deported, U.S. would give you money. No. Now, for politics and other reasons, could government try to negotiate and then make it easier to get it? They might, but I'm not aware of that. And I know the law doesn't, give those things here. So that's something people need to know. There's no money for that. Well, you don't just get deported for driving, driving violations. There has to be, more to it than that. And then this goes to, the criminal grounds for deportation. It would be difficult to delve into all this. That's a whole aspect of it area. But don't just because you are driving, you get a traffic ticket, you don't get deported. Unless, of course, if you have a final order of deportation and then you commit a traffic infraction, you happen to be in an area, and then the police, they hand you over to immigration trying to deport you. But if you are here, even without papers, they would take you to immigration court again. You don't just get deported like that. Well, if you have a pending I-485 for 2 years or more, I would do service requests at least 2-3 times, get those proof that you are trying. make info pass, visits, and then if nothing comes out of it, after 2-3 years, you might want to exercise your options with the federal court, because that's getting to. If your immigration clock stop ticking, the only thing, it depends on what stop it. And then if you stop it because, let's say, you reschedule your asylum application and asylum interview, once they reschedule you for another interview, you attend, your clock start ticking. And if it's immigration court, let's say you are one of those classes where if they verify your court, you are eligible for what they call expedited hearing, and then you rescind that expedited hearing, it will stop your clock until you get court dates, and then it start again. That's what happened. Yes, just because you've been removed from the US, it doesn't mean that you lose your assets here. Your assets are still your assets. Now, that has nothing to do with if you had debts and other things. There's a lot of issues people wouldn't understand. But if you have assets and then they are, your sole asset, they are clean, you get those assets back. No one can take that away from you, even if you're in Gambia. You can appoint a power of attorney to someone else to get your assets if you want to sell them or do whatever you want. Your property is your property, and then even the government would make sure that it's protected. And I'm telling people, the incident happened in Seattle where, a U.S. attorney was actually using fake IDs and social withdrawing money from immigrants' bank account who were deported. And then they caught up to him. They take those things seriously. I'm telling you, the U.S. immigration laws might be harsh, but it's one of those few countries that would also protect the rights of immigrants. It's unbelievable how much, ACLU and, other immigration association would go, fighting for immigrants. And then the law recognized that. People wouldn't understand. It's tough. It's scary. The U.S., they take their laws seriously. And then if you happen to be at the wrong side of the law, they will enforce it. Just like us, immigrants, if we happen to be on the wrong side, we don't have paperwork, they might enforce those orders and send us back home. But if someone else wanted to exploit immigrants too, believe me, they will stand for you. It's one of those few countries that would actually stand for you. And then people should know that, Well, if immigration made a finding of marriage fraud, what that means is a permanent bar to relief. But people living here for 40 years, and then if the immigration is saying, what they are trying to tell you is, let's say you could be living here for 50 years, and then if you get your status through marriage, and then that marriage was never real, you married solely for the purpose of getting papers. That's what people have to understand. The concept is the sole purpose of your marriage is to evade immigration law, meaning there are no other reason why you got married to that individual but for, to avoid deportation. And then later immigration found that out. Even if you are a citizen, they can take everything. It's like you never got it. You get it fraudulently. So they can take it, ab initio. If you're a master's student and then you graduated, you are still in F1 status, the law gives you 60 days grace period. And then my advice would be apply for OPT, optional practical training. And then that would give you another 9 months extension. And then unless you are doing some other courses, if your degree is in STEM area, you could actually renew your work permit for another, I think 19 months or 24 months. That would buy you so much time here. Look into H-1B visas, if you get employed by companies. Or if you feel like, you are a master's degree holder and then you have a progressive experience of 5 years prior to that master's in a field that is of intrinsic value, you can do what they call self-sponsorship EB-2 visas for yourself. Those things are available, you can do. All right, folks, I think that's most of the questions that I have. And then if anybody have any other questions, just inbox me, but I would go offline until another time. But to sum it up, the most important thing people need to know, just because you are here without papers, unless you have an order of deportation, issued by an immigration judge, don't think that immigration will come to your home and then arrest you and take you home. So stop those hearing. You don't need to call me and ask me, you have a pending case, whether they will deport you. No. That's not going to happen. That's the basis you have to understand. File your taxes, and then do not lie on other state forms that you are, filling because you are trying to hide your, identity or thinking that ICE would come and then fine you. because doing that, that would have collateral damages in any future immigration application you are doing. Be truthful as you can. And I'm telling you, if ICE, Immigration and Custom Enforcement, if they want to find you, they will find you. So stop, the hide and seek. Do what you ought to do. File your taxes, and then if you are employed, without authorization, that's one thing. But don't misrepresent yourself as a U.S. citizen in seeking employment, because that's a permanent bar. That's a whole other, different area that, most Gambians could get entangled with. So that's something you don't want to do. But file your taxes. Go about your business. Stay away from criminal laws. That's your best option. And then if you accidentally happen to get in contact with immigration and then they take you into custody, of course, they would release you on bond eventually. You'll go through proceeding. Get a lawyer, and then that way you can know your options and then see what's the best options for you. All right, and then thank you everybody for watching, and then until another time. But if anybody have any questions, just send it to me. I'll try my best to answer them. Thank you.